my house.
Feel a lot closer.
But we hear the band and everything, yeah.
Hear the freight train in the morning. When, went by, going about 5:30, just turn on the pulpit.
That's the longer than the short ones that are around 7, gravel train.
Good morning. It's
Morning.
9 o'clock and time for the Tuesday, September 17th, 2019 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We're going to begin a moment of silent reflection for our first responders. This will be followed by the invocation given today by Chaplain William Meade of Indian River Estates East, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Dylan Reingold, the County Attorney. Please rise.
Let us pray. Our Father, we are so grateful to have another day, to be alive and to experience everything that is beautiful around us. Father, we thank you for these ladies and gentlemen that take charge of our county and do such a great job in making sure that we are safe and that our county is beautiful. May you bless us in this session today. Bless each one of these ladies and gentlemen. May you have your way in our hearts and our lives. And may from this day forward, may we have even better days in Indian River County. Thank you for all that you've done for us and for the beautiful day outside. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll ask the board if there are any additions or deletions to today's agenda.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve agenda as presented by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now have a proclamation to be presented, and I'll be very happy to read it if Mr. Paquette will come up to the dais. Excuse me, the podium. Thank you.
That thing.
Here. This is big.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very happy this morning to read this proclamation honoring William A. Paquette on his retirement from the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners Department of General Services, Sandridge Golf Club. Whereas William A. Paquette retires from the Indian River County Department of General Services, Sandridge Golf Club, effective September 28, 2019. And whereas William A. Paquette began his career with Indian River County on October 2nd, 1992, as cart attendant, and was promoted to the pro shop attendant position on November 14th, 1997, and he held this position to the present. And whereas during that time, William A. Paquette was responsible for the enjoyment of every customer he had interactions with in the pro shop and created a fun and friendly atmosphere while checking in customers. And whereas William A. Paquette has diligently worked and will be missed by many customers who have come to know him as Mr. Bill. And whereas William A. Paquette served his county with selflessness, always looking to make the golf course a better place. And whereas William A. Paquette has gained the respect and admiration of his colleagues, co-workers, and golfing community within the county. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board applauds William A. Paquette's efforts on behalf of the county, and the board wishes to express their appreciation for the dedicated service he has given to Indian River County for the last 27 years. Be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners and staff extend heartfelt wishes for success in his future endeavors. Adopted the 17th day of September 2019. Mr. Paquette, thank you very much for your service to the citizens of Indian River County and all the many golfers who have passed by your office at the golf club.
It was such a pleasure. It wasn't really a job. It was just going to a place to meet all my friends and and family.
I say the same thing about my job here.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to start with Bob Kamarinis and a guy named Hank who hired me. And then I got Bella and John to come in after me, and they were like my family. Yeah. So I've been so lucky, fortunate, blessed, whatever you want to say. I had a career with the New England Telephone Company for almost 30 years. I came down here, and I got lucky again and found Sand Ridge. And then 25 years ago, I found Joan, and I'm still lucky and blessed again.
So, may I ask one question? What is your handicap?
Right now, it's a 10. It used to be a lot better, but I got older.
You know what's even more impressive, that Commissioner Slurry knows what a handicap is. So that's a big revelation here today.
Yeah. So,
Well, thank you for your service.
our pleasure, my pleasure. It wasn't really a job. It was just a pleasure to come in and help all these people every day and comment with a lot of people that came in. I asked them where they came from, the ones that I knew that weren't around here. And I sometimes had some stories I could tell with them too. And they were anxious to come back the second time and the third time so they could talk to me again. So it was really warm, very nice.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I am Bill Nagy, Director of Golf at Sandridge Golf Club, and I've worked with Bill now for 24 years, and I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to work alongside you, Bill, and I'm really going to miss you. You're like my second dad, and I really appreciate all the good times and your service and patronage to the golf course. So I wish you luck in all your endeavors, and keep playing golf.
Oh, I will. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mike Zito, Assistant County Administrator. A testament to Bill's dedication and love that he spreads is the folks who've come to join him today. Would you raise your hand if you're here for Bill? Some past employees. As the proclamation read, fun and friendly, yes, but Bill is the consummate professional in that pro shop, and a big part of why it's won consecutive awards for Municipal Merchandiser of the Year, Sandridge Golf Club. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. And we feel so strongly about this day. I want to go out on a limb here and say that when we think about the Mount Rushmore of Sandridge Golf Club, we have Bob Kamernitz, and today we're instilling Bill Paquette. And there's two slots left, and we're working hard for him. One of the guys here is in line, and sure, John and I are going to fight it out for the fourth spot, but it's a proud calling to serve Sandridge Golf Club and the mission to provide a quality experience for our residents at country club feel at municipal rates, and we continue to strive to achieve that. And Bill, we're going to miss you because you're a huge part of that, and stay with us.
I will.
We have an emeritus program, so I'd like to invite you to that. I just kind of made that up, but
Thank you.
we're going to.
It's going to happen.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Thanks, everyone.
Mrs. Zito, you pointed out that Bill is, Mr. Bill is beloved, and he's got quite an attendance today to honor him. And I don't know if you recall, but when we were transitioning, there was some food vendor transition. We visited, and Mr. Bill apparently had an appointment in the morning, so he was not there. And the concern was not over the food. The concern was over, where's Mr. Bill? So the calling goes farther than we could ever imagine. I believe they were, they just came to golf, but they wanted to know where Mr. Bill was. So they thought he was part of the free agent trade when we changed the vendors. But we're glad you were there, and I understand that was one of the odd times where you might have been away from your post, as your attendance was impeccable. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Bill, thank you for your service. I got to know Bill for at least 20 of those 27 years, and he said something about it wasn't like going to work, it was like coming to see your friends and family. Well, his coworkers and all of the patrons at Sandridge, I think, had the same feeling for Bill, that he is a friend and like a family member for so many folks out there. And just to kind of Mike's point before, that provided such great service and kind of created a community there at Sandridge that is special, and that is greatly appreciated. And would like to thank Mr. Bill for all your service and for helping make Sandridge a special place. And he will be missed, but I know he's going to come back out there and play and visit with folks still. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, can you help me
All
with my
right, Bella.
slice? and all?
I can try, but he's a better one.
And the honeydew list begins. You like that idea? Is it long? This is going somewhere. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
We now have the minutes from 3 regular meetings.
Chairman, make motion approved minutes of June 18, July 2nd, July 9th, 2019.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien to approve the 3 minutes. The second is by Commissioner Flesher. Any comments, corrections? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. There are 2 information items. Anybody want to pull one for discussion? Not, there being none, they will now move to the consent agenda. Would anybody, any commissioner wish to pull anything from the consent agenda for discussion? With no commissioners, I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to pull anything from today's consent agenda for discussion. There being none, be happy to get a
Approval.
motion to approve. We have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner O'Brien. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move to constitutional officers and government agencies. Indian River County Sheriff Darrell Law, expenditure from the criminal and sex offender registered fee account.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher to approve the item.
Second.
Second by Commissioner O'Brien. Any comments? Sheriff, any comment for us before we vote?
No, sir. Good morning and thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for your service. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We now move to public items.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one question, Sheriff, before you step out. We used to have a cycling of a video of the registered sex offender list that used to appear on the channel, and it seems to be that rotation. I haven't seen it in a while, and I didn't know where it had gone. Is it still up there? Okay, just not clicking at the right time.
Right. But I'd be happy to revisit it or even share it with Mr. Brown.
Okay, great, thank you.
Now move to item 10A1, public hearings. Final public hearing, county-initiated request to amend the text of the capital improvements element of the county's comprehensive plan to modify certain concurrency management requirements and to update the transportation element to modify certain transportation level of service standards and to remove and replace outdated text, data, and maps. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, all commissioners. My name is Bill Shute. I'm Chief of Long Range Planning. And last December, staff brought to the board the annual capital improvements element update. And at that time, staff brought to the board's attention and the board authorized staff to initiate certain changes to level of service standards in the CIE and to update the transportation element to recognize changed transportation related conditions and more recent data. In this case, for this comp plan element update, I do want to recognize that the MPO staff was instrumental in making it happen. And we do have staff here, so if there are questions on the transportation element. Now, updating the comprehensive plan can be a rather lengthy process. Since December last year, this is the third public hearing in the process. And it involves, as you can see on the slide before you, the application submitted to the department. In this case, we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 25th, 2019, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the board approve. And on June 11th, the same element, all this information was brought to the Board of County Commissioners for a transmittal public hearing, and the board voted to transmit the amendments to the state and regional review agencies so that we can get their comments. And since doing that, we've gotten comments back, and now we're doing the final public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. And when or if it gets adopted, it would be transmitted to the state for final adoption, and there's approximately a 31-day waiting period after they accept it before it becomes finalized and approved. Now, the purpose of the amendment in this case is to implement BCC direction and, to get more specifically, to update and simplify single-family concurrency review procedures, to set some interim level of service standards for County Road 510 and 37th Street, to update to incorporate currently adopted long-range transportation plan references from the LRTP that the MPO prepares, and update other related items. And in the process, we have to ensure that policies, objectives, and general text remain up to date. So, as mentioned, the past action, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval April 25th. The Board of County Commissioners considered it for transmittal on June 11th, and it was transmitted to the state, and there's no state or regional review agency had any objections or comments. Looking specifically at the amendments, the various text amendments, some of them, some less substantive and some more substantive. Policy 1.12 changed the year from 2018 to 2019. Policy 3.5, that one gets into the level of service standards and looking at County Road 510 from 66th Avenue to US Highway 1 and 37th Street from US Highway 1 to Indian River Boulevard. And the recommendation is to change from level of service D to level of service D plus 20%. But recognizing that both projects are actually planned for, there's been delay in the County Road 510 project. That's a very expensive project, and the state has taken over that. And it's between $80 and $90 million to complete that project. So these are temporary measures intended to allow for those projects to catch up, and then we would revert back to level of service D after the planned road improvement projects are completed. So they are committed and prioritized but delayed. Now, with respect to text amendments, there's part of this is to exempt all single-family homes, not just pre-1990 lots, from concurrency review on a permit-by-permit basis. They would still be under development project review for I want to say site plans, but sorry, for plats and so forth. They would still be part of the concurrency review process and accounted for with traffic impact studies and so forth at time of development application review. But it's when you get down to the actual building permit issuance that the recommendation is to exempt them from review. But we'd still track on an individual basis. We have spreadsheets to keep track of them and then share that information with consultants, traffic engineers, so that these numbers can be incorporated into traffic studies for overall concurrency review. And every year in the concurrency system, we would actually update, and these ones that are tracked in the spreadsheets would actually come out and be accounted for in the traffic counts. So it's basically a year process. So looking at the transportation element, so we have some duplication between the elements. Transportation element policy 1.1, similar changes. We're looking at both roadway segments and level service D to level service D plus 20 with the reverter clause back to level service D after the project is completed on both projects. Policy 1.4 is remove building permit approval for single-family development from concurrency review. Again, similar to the CIE text amendments. Provide the Public Works Director with approval to accept traffic capacity special analyses, to correct time period of capital improvements plan, 5 years instead of 7 years. That was an old holdover that apparently got overlooked at some point. And policy 1.6, revised time period for updating traffic impact fee schedule to be consistent with the county's recently modified impact fee ordinance. So this past year, we had amended the ordinance to do impact fee update once every 5 years. Policy 1.7, some language change there to change from shall impose by 2015, all or part of one of the 5-cent local option gas tax to
And-
shall.
And Bob Johnson thanks you for that, even though he can't be here today.
And it shall consider imposing optional gas tax by 2023. Policy 1.10, add to development standards the option of other means of shared access and interconnections as an alternate to providing service, so frontage roads in this case. Policy of 1.11, change basis for parking requirements from parking studies to ITE, Institute of Traffic Engineers, parking data and parking studies. Policy 1.12, change from 2030 cost feasible long-range transportation plan to 2040 cost feasible plan to recognize the adopted 2040 long-range transportation plan from the MPO. Policy 2.4, spell acronym Intelligent Transportation System. 2.5 is update shared access requirements to refer to other means of shared access interconnections. Again, this is something that we've been implementing as a county, and give examples: the Walmart, Sam's Club, interconnection accesses. Objective 3, change completion date for acquiring all county right-of-way for county collector and arterial roads and mass transit corridors within the urban service area from 2025 to 2035. Again, this is a 2040 LRTP reference here. Policy 3.1, revised to allow general right-of-way width standards to be modified by FDOT or the Public Works Director, provided drainage is adequately handled. Policy 5.5 is to correct a typographical error. 6.2, looking at changing the frequency of meetings with FDOT staff to review various roadway standards from regularly to as needed. Policy 6.4, delete current policy 6.4 for establishing the Traffic Operations Subcommittee of the MPO Technical Advisory Committee. In this case, it's a separate subcommittee that's deemed not necessary. Policy 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7, just some renumbering there and minor text edits. Policy 10.1, again, another reference to 2030 cost feasible plan being replaced by the 2040 cost feasible plan. Okay, so besides changing the policies, numerous updates are proposed to the text, and here's just a bullet showing that we looked at the table of contents, numerous maps, various tables, looked at outdated references throughout the entire transportation element, statistical data and monetary figures, and recent project information. So lots of different updates to the text. As with all comprehensive plan amendments, future land use policy 14.3 requires that one of the following 4 criteria be met to approve a comp plan amendment. In this case, it's criterion 3, a substantial change in circumstances. In those changed circumstances, we're looking at information, references, some processes now out of date. And as discussed in this presentation, level of service issues arising for 2 roadways, the County Road 510 and 37th Street, scheduled for widening and alternate improvements that will increase capacity but will take time for actual road project construction. And I didn't jump into the 37th Street alternate project, but that's listed in the CIE, and I think the Commission's aware of that project. Now, the recommendation is staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the proposed comprehensive plan text amendment by adopting the ordinance attached to the agenda item and authorizing the Community Development Director to transmit the ordinance and related materials to the State Land Planning Agency and interested parties. And that's all for the presentation.
Does any commissioner have any questions of Mr. Shute?
I do not.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Bill, could you go back to where it had the comment for 2.5? It's back a couple more pages. There you go. Excuse me. So under updated shared access requirements to refer to other means of shared access, and this question would be tied to a current site plan process or development that's going on the east side of Walmart on State Road 60 behind the Applebee's. That complex has a name. But apparently when the original site plan was done for Walmart, even though we required their site plan to have interconnectivity to the east, the road jurisdiction of that common access was left with Walmart corporate, which then they dictated who could ever move into the property to the east, because they would say, that's the property, here's a site plan, but we're not going to allow you to put in tenants A, B, and C. It gave them a lot of control and delayed any development on that property for years because you had to go back to. So when we require interconnectivity and stub outs to the east, will that language change developer one, the first guy that starts, to dictate policy for development two on a piece of separately owned, privately owned property adjoining? Will that help this any, or?
I think that, at least looking at the language in the policy itself, it doesn't go into that detail.
Okay.
So it, you know, if that would need to be addressed, you'd have to probably address it perhaps and maybe.
I don't know how many of those are out there, and I was surprised to hear it on this one, but I get why they want it, because then they get to dictate their neighbor. But in the big picture, I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions of staff? There being none, I'll now open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this issue? Anybody from the public? There being none, close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, move staff recommendation to adopt the proposed comp plan changes.
We've got the motion from Commissioner O'Brien to approve, with second by Commissioner Adams. Any other comments? Any other comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Shute, Mr. Du Bois. Next up is Edison E. Vasquez's request for abandonment of a 5-foot portion of a 70-foot right-of-way for 24th Street adjacent to Lot 1, Block 5 of the Heathland subdivision. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Edison Vasquez. I'm asking for right away of about.
So what we'll have first, if it's okay, Mr. Vasquez, is our staff presentation of this, and then I'll invite you up to comment.
I'll do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John McCoy with the Community Development Department. And this is a request for right-of-way abandonment, and it is a fairly simple and straightforward request. The applicant's requesting essentially a 5-foot wide right-of-way abandonment to increase his buildable lot width from a 75-foot wide lot to an 80-foot wide lot. The subject site is located a couple blocks south of 26th Street. It's 24th Street, and it's a 5-foot strip on the north side of his lot, and it's just a couple blocks east of 43rd Avenue. So essentially, the request is a 5-foot wide strip. The right-of-way was platted as a 70-foot wide strip. The land development regulations for a improved street with a open drainage system, a swale drainage system, is 60 feet. So his fair share of that 10 feet overage would be 5 feet. In this particular case, it is an improved roadway. So there's pavement, there's utilities, there's a number of items going on, but it is a short segment, and it only essentially connects two north-south streets. So in our review, we did determine that there are some utilities there. So in essence, we want to reserve a utility easement over the 5-foot strip. So Mr. Vasquez gets to count the 5 feet for his lot width, but we still preserve any rights we have to, access and maintain those utilities that fall within that 5-foot strip. So essentially, all the utilities will remain as is and in place. With that, I would like to get to the staff recommendation, and the staff recommendation is that the board abandon the public's rights to the subject segment of right-of-way, but reserving a drainage and utility easement over the entire area being abandoned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions with board staff? Commissioner O'Brien.
John, can you go back to the aerial photo, please? Is there a sidewalk there where the right-of-way is?
There is not a sidewalk. It actually, this was, I think Walker's Glen is the development to the west of this. And essentially, the improvements end with Walker's Glen. There were sort of sidewalks were put in, so you can see the sidewalks going up and down 45th Avenue. And those end with the Walker's Glen.
Oh, they do, okay, so they don't go east of the curve there.
Correct, yeah, it just terminates.
Any other questions for staff? There being none, then at this time I will open the public hearing and begin with Mr. Vasquez. Any comments after listening to staff? Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else from the audience care to speak on this issue? There being none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners,
Motion to move staff recommendation?
we have the motion to approve staff recommendation for Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Adams. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez. We move now to public discussion items. There's one, a request to speak from Fern Grounds regarding littering trash on our roads and highways.
I do not see Mrs. Grounds here in the audience.
No.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, we'll, as we have in the past, if she does come in, probably allow her to speak when there's an appropriate break. We will now move to public notice items, and I will ask Dylan Reingold, the county attorney, to read them, please.
Thank you very much. We have three scheduled public hearings for October 1st, 2019. The first is Mark W. Platt's request for abandonment of a 130-foot long segment of the 70-foot wide 57th Avenue right-of-way south of 97th Place of the Tropicana Homesite subdivision. This will be legislative in nature. There will also be a public hearing scheduled for October 1st, 2019 to consider an application for a Class B and Class E1 Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity for MCT Express, Inc., doing business as United Medical Transportation. And finally, we have a public hearing also for October 1st, which will be to consider an application for a Class B Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity by Cleveland Clinic, Martin Health, for Martin Health System Advanced Medical Transport. And those are the three public hearings scheduled for October 1st. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reingold. We now move to county administrative matters, the ratification of collective bargaining agreement between Indian River County and the Teamsters Local Union number 769, effective October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2022. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have before you today a recommendation to ratify a collective bargaining agreement with our Teamsters bargaining unit, who represent our blue-collar employees. It is a 3-year agreement. It contains a general wage increase of 3% in year one and a merit increase each year of the 3-year term. Also, there are reopeners for general wage increases in years 2 and 3. There are a couple of other minor changes, such as a tool allowance for some of our mechanics for $150, a couple of changes in some of our utility classifications, and the estimated cost of this for the first year for the general wage increase and the merit increase is about $535,000 over the life of the 3-year agreement. The cumulative cost is about $2.4 million for that. I would add that we would I would also recommend a 3% general wage increase for our non-union employees on the same effective date. But just wanted to present that for board's approval. So staff recommends that the board ratify the agreement. The union did ratify it, and I want to thank the Steve Myers and the union bargaining representatives, as well as the county bargaining team with Mike Zito and Suzanne Boyle working on this. I want to thank everybody for their efforts and cooperation in reaching this agreement.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Brown? There being none, I'll ask if there's anybody from the audience who'd like to comment on this item. There being none, commissioners?
Move approval to adopt.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Zork. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We move on to Departmental Matters Community Development, a request to waive bid process for community development software. Good morning, Mr. DuBois.
Good morning.
This item has to do with a request to waive a bid process for community development software. In particular, the building division has been looking into this matter. Scott McAdam, building official, could not be here today, but I'm going to give an overview and present staff's information on this item. So the Community Development Department, in particular the Building Division, currently use two separate softwares related to building permit issuance, site development review by the various departments. The first one, which we've had since 1992, which is essentially our legacy software, is what's called CD Plus. Is one of the main, it's our main software for permitting review coordination by staff, development review, code enforcement, contractor licensing. But we also have a separate software that's used called Clear Village, which we've been using since 2012. And this is more focused on inspection scheduling and routing, inspection results, online permitting, change out permits. So ideally, it would be one system, but we've had these legacy softwares, and we're using them. One of the main issues we've had with this software over the year, in particular, is this synchronizing the issues of the inspections and the permitting information between the two systems. They do not communicate well to each other, and working with our computer specialists, there's lots of expenditures and working to get operational costs. Worked with the vendors for the two systems over the past 7.5 years. It's just a challenge to keep them synchronized and managed to the point where, and also they're somewhat out of date. So we've been looking, the county staff, for a number of years now, for a replacement software that combines all the aspects together and is more update to the current features. So in that vein, staff has looked at up to 14 different software options of various vendors. We narrowed them down to about 4 that we particularly focused on, and in the end, we ended up with a company or program called My Government Online as the best option, which I'll get into a little bit. As far as cost, the current system, there's an approximate annual cost of $78,000, but also a minimum of $20,000 that staffs have been working with to address these inconsistency and synchronization issues. We're just going to touch base on the 4 finalists we looked at. We looked at a program called Citizen Serve. Again, the prices, implementation costs $160,000. That'd be just for the building division portion of it. And then annual costs of $120,000. We also looked at what's called MuniCity. Again, building division only portions, fairly expensive, $260,000 implementation, and then annual cost of $66,000. And we also looked at Acela, which is another popular software. Again, the cost, and we're just looking at building division only in these numbers, $3,000 implementation costs, $100,000 annual costs. And then to add the other multiple department modules that we would need, it's just a very expensive endeavor. When we get to MyGov and looked at it, this program is fairly unique in that it's actually it's a government entity that's put this together. So we're actually it would be a government-to-government intergovernmental agreement to get in on this process. Because of that, they have the opportunity to essentially charge no cost for implementation. They'll work with the county as a nonprofit government to get everything up and running, and so there's no implementation upfront cost, and then there's annual cost of about $88,000, which is comparable and actually better than the current costs to the county when you look at maintenance costs. The way we're approaching it in this proposal is with MyGov is to have a phase 1, which is what the contract is that's being brought to you today for just the mainly the building division conversion, but it would also include as separate phases into the same contract. Planning division, code enforcement, contractor licensing, document management, and fire department. Part of the proposal is in the funding, which in this proposal is mostly coming through the building department funds, but also account for some funding for what we're calling exit fees from the current software for the overlap. So there's little or no disruption between the transfer of software. So why did we, as the county staff, focus on MyGov? Let me just say, in this program, it wasn't just the building staff that looked at this. It wasn't just the planning staff. We had the various departments. We worked closely with computer services staff. We coordinated with utilities, public works. And in the end, we all concluded this is a good program to go with. It updates, brings us into the 21st century, and it's just a good program based on everything we've explored. Just the other points I want to make, that this is used by many jurisdictions in different states. In Florida, we've coordinated closely. We've had conference calls with Escambia County, which is a fairly comparable population, and they're all good with it. They've been using it since 2017. They have nothing but good things to say about it. More recently, the city of Sebastian has transitioned to this program about 5 months ago, and all indications are they're very happy with it. One of the benefits of this program is once you have it, particularly for contractors, you can use a single portal to log into the system, and it's good for all jurisdictions. So for example, if they log into the system, if the county goes with it, it's the same portal for Sebastian. So there's a lot of interconnectivity that would go along with that. Again, for what's proposed for phased implementation, the first phase that's being proposed would be focusing specifically through the building division needs of permits and licensing, coordinating on integrating address information from GIS. Then we would also be getting into planning and zoning, development review, code enforcement, and fire module. It's kind of the second part to that first phase. As I indicated, utilities and public works have looked at this system, and they're on board and intend to, under separate agreements for their own purposes, enter into this program with mygov.com for phase 2 and to work and integrate into the program. In the end, again, we're bringing this forward to just get authorization through the board to waive the standard bid process. Again, this is more of an intergovernmental agreement. It'll provide all the services that we've been looking for from our research with no upfront cost, just the maintenance cost once it's implemented, and that's our recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Du Bois? Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roland, one, will anybody be able to access this permit information?
Yes, the county, one of the benefits of this is it does have better access for the public. They can check on the permits. It's better, they can even check on inspection scheduling as it's happening. There's a component to it that it contains broad access. As far as every bit of information, there might be some portions that the public won't access, but from a perspective of a user-friendly, this is absolutely that.
Okay, so if I get a call and somebody's complaining, hey, I turned a permit in 3 weeks ago, what's going on? I can call up that permit, and I should be able to say, okay, it looks like staff sent back to your engineer a request for additional information, and that's what we're waiting on. So I can relay that kind of information back and forth?
Yes.
Okay,
And
that'd
again, that's one of the side benefits of this program.
Yeah, I think that's great. That,
It's actually going to free up a lot of staff time.
Right.
Because people will be self-service.
okay. And then just the other question is, from a cybersecurity point of view, is IT department okay with this? And
Yes, we do have Debbie Fail here from the IT who could speak to that if you like, but our general feeling is, in getting with them, is that this is
Just-
pretty secure.
if you wouldn't mind, come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Through our investigation, we found that they did
Name,
meet all
please,
of
for the
those.
record.
I'm Debbie Fail with Information Systems. They met that criteria. It's an in-cloud hosted site, so they provide all of the security, and that is all part of their intergovernmental agreement, the security for that system.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr.?
Yes, have a couple. I can say I was here in 1992 when we went live with CD Plus, and we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Now, do we have any ceremonial ending cost? I know we have the overlap, but some people like to throw it into the river, some people like to throw it into the landfill. It's done its purpose, but it has really become cumbersome to work between the two systems. So I'm glad we finally have come to a point in time where that system is going to be replaced and we'll move forward. One concern that I have, same as when we implemented the 1992 version as it affects the enterprise fund for the building department. I'm not asking for the numbers now, but when you come up with the cost-sharing formula as we go forward, if you could just share that with us. Some functions addressing kind of falls under the subdivision plat side, so what side of the house does that fall on? But when you have that determined allocation out, if you can just share that with us once you have it.
Okay, we can send that, and we have Maddie Williams from the Treasure Coast
Right.
Builders Association has asked that question because they want to make sure that we're not taking building department funds and using them for other purposes. So we do have a cost breakdown to ensure that code enforcement, for instance, pays for their portion of the software support. But we can email that out to the board, and we've had that discussion with Maddie and provided some info, and we'll continue to. Clearly, we're not going to take the building department funds and spend them on something for utilities, but we'll send that funding breakdown out to the board.
Okay. And last question, if you could notice a pull the plug date once we get fully converted and crossed over to put CD Plus finally to bed.
Yeah, right now, we're tentatively looking at July, roughly, of next year. Would
that's
be a
near
go
term.
live date. Now, again, that would be primarily for the building side of it with the other modules to go in. But that's what we're shooting for with some trial usage of it leading up to that.
Right, great. Thanks for all your efforts and the other staff for getting us to this point. Thanks.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes, thank you. First, I'm really excited about this moving forward, to be honest. I think it's a much more efficient, much more functional, and much more customer-friendly system. So kudos to y'all for bringing this forward. And with that, I'd be happy to move staff's recommendation.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Adams, and we're going to give the close second to Commissioner Zork. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this item? Anyone from the public? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Du Bois. We move on now to Public Works, Florida Department of Environmental Protection Grant Agreement, number 19 IR3, Vero Beach Restoration, Sector 5. Good morning, Mr. Spierka.
Morning, Commissioners. Rich Berg, Public Works Director. What we have today is a Florida Department of Environmental Protection grant from their Florida Beach Management Fund Assistant Program. What we have is a grant commitment for $821,000 of an allocated $1.7 million. They needed to free up the money, the remainder of the money for the 1.7, which we were informed this morning that they're working on an amendment to the grant, so that we'll be bringing that forward to the board to receive the entire $1.7 million. The agreement allocates $2.7 million to the Sector 5 Beach Renourishment Project. Basically $1 million of federal project costs, $821,000 from DEP, a local share of about $927,000 for the total of $2.7 million. Funding is available within local option tourist tax revenue, for Sector 5 beach renourishment, Hurricane Matthew. Staff recommends that the board approve FDP grant agreement and authorize the chairman to sign the agreement on behalf of the county. Following board approval, the county will transmit the partially executed agreement to the state for final signatures. Upon the receipt of the full agreement of the FDP agreement from the state, staff will transmit it to the clerk of the board for filing.
Thank you very much. Any questions from Mr. Spierka? Commissioner Bryan?
Kind of not directly related to this, but related to Sector 5. Kendra, can you call up, or maybe Scott, the GIS map? Because it's my understanding we're still need some signatures for the, you're going to cover that?
We'll be covering that in the next agenda item.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We'll be covering all the parcels and all that stuff.
Okay, never mind.
Any other questions for staff? I will ask if there's anybody in the audience who would wish to comment on this item. There being none, commissioners?
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Zork. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. You're up again, Mr. Spierka.
I'm going to turn this one over to Kendra.
Oh, chicken. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, Kendra Cope, Natural Resources Manager for Indian River County. So the presentation that we're going to go through today is one that was made to give you an update of the Sector 5 beach project, as well as bring forward a recommendation to award a bid for bid number 2019-006. Okay, maybe. It was working. It's now not working. All right, so a little bit of a background for the Sector 5 beach project. This is a 3.1 mile stretch of beach located in the middle of the county's 22.4 mile boundaries. So the northern boundary of the Sector 5 beach project is about 300 feet north of the Sea-Watch condos located in the town of Indian River Shores, and then extends down to the southern boundary, which is the northern portion of the Rio Mar Golf Course. FDEP has designated this area as a critically eroding beach due to its large amount of background erosion. So to move forward with a beach and dune nourishment project, the county did have to receive permits from both FDEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. Those were received earlier this year. So FDEP permit number 0363427-001-JC is the permit authorizing us to place sandfill from DEP, and then the other permit number SAJ-2018-01171 is our permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. This past month, staff did file for a permit modification for the FDEP permit. That permit modification was approved and allowed us to add additional upland sand sources for bidding, and then an additional beach construction access within the Sector 5 project area. However, that FDEP permit, although it authorizes us to place sandfill on the dry sandy portion of beach, it does not authorize staff to access private property. Traditionally, most beachfront properties do own the land between the landward edge or seaward edge of the dune line down to the mean high water line, making that private property. That's the dry sandy portion of the beach. So in order for staff to access this for a construction purpose and place beach compatible sandfill, we would need to ask for construction easements within that private property. This has traditionally been done in other beach project areas, both Sector 3 and Sector 7. However, for Sector 5, this is our first large-scale beach project for the county. So staff moved forward by requesting perpetual easements in order to increase efficiencies within the beach program, so we wouldn't have to go through the beach easement process for all beach projects moving forward if there were to be any additional ones. So this was a long process. We first sent out a mailing on June 16th with a full construction easement package, which included the easement instrument, informational letters, and the sketch and legal. Then staff sent out a second mailing on July 1st of this year, which followed up with all properties that did not return an easement at that point in time. And then staff started doing door-to-door efforts on July 25th. Since that time, there's been continued staff effort to communicate with these property owners and their attorneys, so that our county attorney has been involved in a lot of those conversations as well, and those are continually ongoing even today. But as Commissioner O'Brien just mentioned earlier, staff did create a GIS web map that is available on the county website that does link a visual to what easements have been returned within each of the beach sectors or the beach management sectors and which ones have not. And so we're going to go through a bunch of screenshots of that map in just a moment to identify areas that we are good to go to place continual sand fill and ones that we're still in communication with those property owners. But first, a summary of the construction easement process. Within the Sector 5 beach project area, there are 69 parcels that we must receive signed and notarized construction easements in order to have a full continual sand fill placement effort. To date, we have received all but 17 of those easements. That 17 missing easements is equivalent to about 25% of the project area. I will want to note that all of those parcel owners and their attorneys have been contacted, and our county attorney and staff have been in constant communication with them. For instance, three of the 17 did verbally and write emails saying that they signed their easements last week and they're just in the mail. So we just haven't received them yet, so they'll pop up on the map as not received. So please keep that in mind. And then of that 17, one of those parcels has formally declined. However, we're still in communication with that property owner, and that decision may switch. We do not know at this time. So the question is what happens if a property owner does not sign and return an easement for their property? Well, we would have to then bypass their property. And so there's pretty much two different construction methods of how we would bypass those properties. Before I move on to the maps, one of those ways that we could bypass that property is by individually staking out each property with survey stakes prior to construction. And so, as we mentioned, each property owner owns up into the mean high water line, so the northern and southern boundary would be staked out, and the mean high water line would be staked out, giving a very clear visual to the contractor of where to bypass that property in the construction plans. And we could do that by each individual property that hasn't returned an easement, or if there's a clump of easements that haven't been returned within a certain area or a stretch of beach, we might have to choose to bypass all of those at once as a collective group in order for constructability and feasibility for the contractor, making it more effective for us for the project. Either way, it is our ultimate goal to collect all of our easements. The project was designed and engineered in a way that all the easements were collected and that we could have the highest performance of this project when all of those easements are collected. So we are going to continue our effort to obtain the rest of these easements until the day of construction. But here, the next few slides are of the maps. They're screenshots of the live web map that is available on the county website. At the very top is a red line that is a northern Sector 5 boundary. So all properties below that are within the project area. So this section is of the small section of the town of the Indian River Shores. Properties identified in green are ones that we have received signed and notarized easements for. And that allows us to have placed continual sand fill within those areas. It is the properties in yellow that we have not received a signed and notarized easement at this time. But again, we have been in regular communication with each of these property owners, and we do have high hopes of receiving those back. So moving north to south, again, we can most likely we will plan on placing continual sand fill until we reach that first yellow parcel, and at time of construction, based on the easements that are received back at that time, we will have to make one of those infield decisions to either bypass that property individually or if they are lumped together as a group. Once you go into the city of Vero boundaries, right there at the southern end of, or at tracking station going south, we have received all of those easements and do plan on placing continual sand fill. Continuing moving south, again, we have received all of those connected easements and we continue to place continual sand placement. And it isn't until you get to the southern boundary of Con Beach that we start to see these yellow parcels again. So these are parcels where we're in regular communication with property owners and are working with them to provide additional information relative to their concerns of the easement, and we will continue to work with them. And again, hopefully receive those easements back, but we might have to make an in-the-field decision on whether to bypass as a group for constructability and feasibility or to bypass individually at that time. I do want to note as we move south, just south of the Sexton Plaza area in the city of Vero Beach, we do have that one property that has formally declined their signing that easement. And so that one is identified in red. That is what declined means. And then moving further south, we do have a continual stretch of green, which means we can continue to place sand. And it isn't until you get to the very southern portion of the project where you find another grouping of properties that haven't returned their easements. So why is it important to construct the Sector 5 project? Again, DEP has designated this area as a critically eroding beach due to the high background erosion rates that have made this beach more vulnerable to storm impacts. And because of that, we actually did suffer damages from multiple hurricanes, those being Hurricane Matthew, Irma, and now Dorian. So just to give everybody a little bit of background of some of the damages that occurred within this project area, the following pictures that I'm going to show you were all taken at Tracking Station Park in the northern end of Sector 5. So you have pre-storm pictures on the left and post-storm pictures on the right. These are from Hurricane Matthew, where you can see that there was a significant amount of erosion right along that main boardwalk at Tracking Station Park, leaving us an escarpment of about 4 to 5 feet. We did place emergency Category B sand within that park following Hurricane Matthew. And then the following year, that sand did do its job in protecting the park, but Hurricane Irma did take a lot of that sand away with her. As you can see here between pre and post-storm pictures. And then now, just as an update for Hurricane Dorian, our pre-storm pictures, you have a pretty natural sloped beach at Tracking Station Park that just naturally accrued over time. But our post-storm pictures, as you can see here, this is what we would see on our beaches today. There's about a 5 to 6 foot escarpment along that boardwalk at Tracking Station Park due to Hurricane Dorian. Our consultants did go out immediately post-storm and do a post-storm damage assessment for our beach profiles and compared them to our annual summer beach profile surveys. Preliminary assessments based on those calculated surveys actually have increased our estimated amount of sand loss to about 70,000 cubic yards within the Sector 5 project area. So as an aside, restoration even prior to Hurricane Dorian was needed, and that was needed to rebuild the dune and the beach berm. Our goal is to restore what was lost by those previous hurricanes, both Hurricane Matthew and Irma, and then also maximize the amount of sand placement within that project area without impacting hard bottom. In addition to sand placement, we wanted to plant new dune vegetation. That dune vegetation is a natural buffer and allows us to hold tight that new sand in order to decrease the rate of erosion in our dunes and then also grab onto wind-blown sand and hopefully build those dunes. So we did go out to bid for the Sector 5 project, and within that bid request, there was a request to fill 123,800 cubic yards of sand fill from an upland sand source. That's a permitted upland sand source. And then also plant 128,800 dune plants. Again, as an aside, if you include those post-Dorian damages of 70,000 cubic yards of loss, the additional cost for supply, delivery, and placement of fill based on the lowest bid that we'll discuss in just a moment is estimated at $2.3 million. So the county did advertise a bid on July 14th for the Sector 5 beach and dune restoration project, where we solicited bids to restore the dunes and the beaches of that project area and utilize sand from an upland sand source outlined within DEP permit, the original DEP permit and permit modification. The county did bid opening on August 20th of 2019. There were 6 responsive bidders, and the lowest bid equaled just above $4.5 million. So here on the screen is the list of the 6 responsive bidders, where Rehoboth Corporation is identified as the lowest bidder of all of them, again at just above $4.5 million. Before we go into the recommendation, I want to cover funding. For the project area, we do have a federal cost share of about $1.1 million. That money is coming from both a Hurricane Matthew PW and an obligated, both are obligated in a Hurricane Irma PW. We do have the additional cost share from the state, which was just covered in the previous agenda item, where FDEP grant number 19 IR3 allocated as a partial allocation of the $1.7 million that was promised to us for the Sector 5 project. So 19 IR3, as it stands now, is about $821,000 of state cost share. And again, an amendment will be filed quickly after that is agreed upon. And then local cost share, this project is budgeted and available thanks to local option tourist tax. So staff's recommendation is to award the project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, which is Rehoboth Corporation, in the amount of $4,511,712. And then also approve the sample agreement provided as an attachment to this agenda item, and authorize the chairman to execute the agreement after review and approval of the agreement and public construction bond by the county attorney, and following receipt and approval of the required insurance by the risk manager.
Any questions for Ms. Cope?
Mr. Chairman. Kendra, has Rehoboth done other beach restoration projects? Do we know?
Yes, they have. They have successfully constructed multiple projects down in Palm Beach County. All of their recommendations came back extremely positive based on the follow-up that our consultant did prior to the bid opening. And so staff feels very comfortable moving forward with this recommendation.
Okay. And then if we're going to add on the Dorian damage, what's the funding source for that $2.3 million, or is that a Jason question?
I think that's
Yes, so we are hoping to work with FEMA to secure funding for that from Dorian. That has not been determined yet. At this point, we do have reserves available in the beach restoration fund to cover the additional work, and so I would recommend that we move forward with that work as needed, and we try to secure FEMA funding, which is far from a certainty at this point. But I think while we're there, we need to go ahead and do that. The last time we did something on Sector 5 was the Pep Reefs in the 1990s. While we're here, I think we need to go ahead and place the sand that needs to be placed there. And we do have funds available in reserves, and our hope is to secure additional funds from FEMA for Dorian. But as I said, that decision has not been made for the entire state of Florida yet. But we are working with DEM and FEMA to try and do that. We've had a joint beach assessment going on as we speak. So I would recommend that we move forward with the full amount.
Okay, so then as part of the motion, we'll add to use the tourist tax beach renourishment reserves to fund the additional sand needed from Dorian.
Yeah, beach restoration fund reserves.
restoration.
Yes, which do primarily come from tourist tax.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve staff recommendation with the addition that we use the beach restoration fund to cover the additional costs from the losses from Dorian.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second by Commissioner Fleischer. Are there any other questions of staff by the board? Is there anybody from the public who'd wish to comment on this item? Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Tuck Farrell, 12546 North Highway, A1A. I'm the president of the North Beach Civic Association, and we earnestly ask people to sign the easements. You know, we've done this at the north end in the Ambersand area and with the inlet. It's an engineered beach, and it's a win-win for the property owners, for the environment. It's a wonderful thing because you have an engineered beach, it's kind of a done deal. It's so much easier to deal with that. And we have beach erosion, and it's unfortunate from these hurricanes. But this barrier island protects the mainland, and I really appreciate the commission's support here and everyone's support, because our mainland's kind of low, and it's important to maintain the beach area, and also for the turtle nesting in the environment. It's a critical area, and I really appreciate your support. But I would ask those property owners to think about their future, to think about the dunes and their properties. They should consider this engineered beach. It's a help. And some people are a little bit fearful because of property rights and things, but the county's, I believe, is working in good faith, and everybody's working in good faith, and it'd be a mistake to have these parcels that are not joining in. It's a team effort, and everyone's worked so hard to get to this place and where we are. It would really benefit, and I hope people are watching on TV, and I'm not up there for this reason, but I hope they would listen, because this is a good thing, and it helps every property owner. And if we join together and do this, it's much better than leaving these spaces in between. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's only going to help create erosion. You need a solid wall and a solid plan. And Kendra Cope has done a great job, and her staff, to bring this together and to keep up with the management and to get these grants from the state. And these property owners really should consider getting on board. And I appreciate everything you've done to save our beaches, and what the commission has done and what Kendra's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this? There being none, the motion is by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Ms. Cope. Now I think is a great time to take a 10-minute break.